Boone Carter had made assumptions before, wrong ones, but never had he been so completely unprepared for the reality standing before him. The woman in the corral moved with fluid grace around a spirited Mustang, her wheat-colored hair catching the afternoon sunlight like spun gold. She wore simple work clothes, denim shorts that hugged her curves, and a white cotton shirt with soft pink stripes, tied at her waist to reveal a glimpse of toned midriff. A delicate pink neckerchief completed the ensemble, somehow making her look both practical and breathtakingly feminine. Boone found himself frozen at the fence rail, his prepared words stuck in his throat. He'd expected weathered hands, a bent back from hard labor, maybe a few missing teeth. Instead, he watched as she gentled the wild horse with confident authority, her touch firm but tender against the animal's neck. "You must be Carter," she said without turning around, her voice carrying a melodic quality that made his pulse quicken. "You're early." How did you know?" Boone managed, removing his hat instinctively. She finally faced him, and the impact nearly knocked him backward. Her eyes were the color of deep amber, set in a face that belonged in oil paintings, not ranch corrals. High cheekbones, full lips that curved in a knowing smile, and skin that glowed with health and vitality. "Your friend described you well enough," she replied, securing the Mustang's lead rope. "Tall, broad shoulders, always frowning like the world owes him money." Boone felt heat rise in his cheeks. "I don't frown that much. You're doing it right now." Her laugh was like music, rich and warm. "I'm Clementine Ross, though most folks just call me Clem." She moved toward the gate with that same fluid grace, and Boone stepped back to give her room. As she passed through, her shoulder brushed his arm, and he caught a scent of lavender and something wilder. Sage, maybe, or prairie grass after rain. "You look surprised," she observed, studying his expression with those remarkable eyes. I wasn't expecting." He stumbled over the words, feeling foolish. "A plain farm girl?" She tilted her head, amusement dancing in her gaze. "Is that what Thomas told you? That you'd find some simple country mouse who'd be grateful for whatever deal you offered?" The accuracy of her guess made him uncomfortable. That was exactly what Thomas had implied, though not in so many words. Come to think of it, Thomas had been oddly evasive about the details, only saying the Ross family could help with Boone's delicate situation. "He said you might have horses to sell," Boone said carefully. Clementine's smile widened, but there was something sharp beneath it now. "Did he? How interesting. And what kind of horses would a man like you need so desperately that he'd ride 2 days into unmarked territory?" The question caught him off guard. How could she know he was desperate? He'd been careful to maintain his composure in town, never showing weakness. Yet somehow, this stunning woman saw right through him. "Maybe we should discuss business properly," he said, trying to regain control of the conversation. "Oh, we will," Clementine assured him, her tone suggesting she held more cards than he'd realized. "But first, you should meet the rest of my family. They're very eager to make your acquaintance." As if summoned by her words, Boone heard the sound of approaching horses, multiple riders moving fast. His hand instinctively moved toward his sidearm, but Clementine caught the gesture. Now, Mr. Carter," she said, her beautiful face taking on a dangerous edge. "No need for that, unless, of course, you're not who you claim to be." 3 riders emerged from behind the barn, their horses kicking up dust clouds in the late afternoon light. Boone's muscles tensed, but he kept his hand away from his weapon. Clementine watched his reaction with those penetrating amber eyes, as if testing his character. The lead rider was an older man with steel-gray hair and weathered features that spoke of decades under the harsh sun. Behind him rode 2 younger men, clearly his sons based on their similar strong jawlines and confident posture. All 3 were armed, though their weapons remained holstered. "Pa, this is Boone Carter," Clementine announced as the men dismounted. "The one Thomas wrote about." The older man approached with measured steps, his gaze never leaving Boone's face. "Marcus Ross," he said, extending a calloused hand. "These are my boys, Luke and Samuel." Boone shook hands with each man, noting their firm grips and direct stares. They were evaluating him, just as he was evaluating them. But for what purpose? "Beautiful daughter you have," Boone said, hoping to ease the tension. Marcus's expression didn't change. "That she is. Also the finest horse trainer in 3 territories. Can gentle any wild thing that crosses her path." His eyes narrowed slightly, though some creatures prove more challenging than others. Clementine moved to stand beside her father. and Boone noticed how naturally she commanded the space around her. There was nothing submissive or meek about her bearing. This was a woman accustomed to being listened to, respected. Thomas mentioned you're in some kind of trouble, Marcus continued. The kind that requires discretion and fast horses. Boone's blood chilled. How much had Thomas revealed? The banker was supposed to keep his mouth shut about the missing cattle money and the men hunting for it. I need good horses, yes, Boone admitted carefully. For legitimate travel. Legitimate, Samuel repeated, the younger man's tone skeptical. That's an interesting choice of words. Luke, the other son, circled behind Boone in a move that seemed casual but felt distinctly like a flanking maneuver. See, we heard tell there might be some reward money involved, for information about certain missing assets. Boone's heart hammered against his ribs, but he forced his voice to remain steady. I don't know what you've heard, but— Relax, Clementine interrupted, her musical laugh cutting through the mounting tension. We're not bounty hunters, Mr. Carter. We're business people, and right now you need what we're selling. She moved closer, close enough that he could see the gold flecks in her remarkable eyes. The question is, exactly how much trouble are you in? Because that determines our price. The way she said it, with such casual confidence, made Boone realize how thoroughly he'd underestimated this family. They weren't simple ranchers struggling to make ends meet. They were something else entirely. Something that made Thomas nervous enough to send coded letters instead of speaking plainly. What kind of business are you really in? He asked. Marcus smiled for the first time, but it wasn't entirely friendly. The kind that helps men like you disappear when certain people come looking. For the right compensation, of course. A chill ran down Boone's spine. These people knew about the bounty hunters tracking him. They knew about the stolen money he'd been accused of taking. But how? And more importantly, how had they known he'd be coming here before he'd even decided to come himself? Clementine seemed to read his thoughts. You're wondering how we know so much about your situation. The thought occurred to me. She exchanged a glance with her father, some silent communication passing between them. When she looked back at Boone, her expression had grown serious. Because, Mr. Carter, you're not the first desperate man to arrive at our door with a price on his head. And if you're smart, you won't be the last to leave here safely. The implications hit him like a physical blow. This wasn't a chance encounter or a simple horse trade. This was something much more organized, much more dangerous. And judging by the knowing look in Clementine's beautiful eyes, he was already in far deeper than he'd ever imagined. The weight of Clementine's words settled over Boone like a heavy blanket. He studied the faces around him. Marcus with his calculating stare, the two sons positioning themselves strategically, and Clementine herself, beautiful and dangerous in equal measure. How many others? He asked finally. Does it matter? Marcus replied. What matters is whether you're smart enough to accept our help. Clementine stepped closer, close enough that Boone could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. The men hunting you aren't ordinary bounty hunters, Mr. Carter. They're professionals, and they're closing in faster than you think. Boone's jaw clenched. How could you possibly know that? Because we make it our business to know, she said simply. 3 riders passed through Millbrook yesterday asking about a tall cowboy with dark hair and a scar on his left hand. Her gaze dropped to his hand, where a thin white line marked an old knife wound. They'll be here by tomorrow evening. The accuracy of her information sent ice through his veins. He'd been careful to avoid main roads, had paid cash for everything, told no one his real name except Thomas, yet somehow these people had tracked his movements better than he'd tracked them himself. What's your price? He asked, resignation creeping into his voice. Clementine smiled, but there was something predatory in it now. A partnership. What kind of partnership? Marcus spoke up. The kind where everyone benefits. You need safe passage out of the territory. We need someone with your particular skills for a job we've been planning. What skills? Boone asked, though he suspected he already knew. You're fast with a gun, Luke observed. Thomas mentioned you handled yourself well in that saloon fight in Carson City. Boone's blood ran cold. That fight had been self-defense, but it had also been witnessed by half the town. If these people knew about it, they'd done extensive research on his background. I'm not a hired killer, he said firmly. We're not asking you to kill anyone, Clementine assured him, her voice softer now. We're asking you to help us retrieve something that was stolen from us, something valuable that certain people refused to return. She moved around him in a slow circle, her fingers trailing along the fence rail. Boone found himself following her movements, mesmerized by the graceful way she carried herself. "You see, Mr. Carter, we've been watching you for weeks, ever since Thomas first mentioned your situation. You're not just running from bounty hunters. You're running from the consequences of doing the right thing." Boone froze. "What do you mean? The missing money you're accused of stealing?" She stopped directly in front of him, those amber eyes holding his gaze. "You didn't take it, but you know who did." The world seemed to tilt beneath his feet. How could she possibly know about his former partner's betrayal, about the evidence he'd tried to gather before everything went wrong? "Frank Dawson," she continued, her voice barely above a whisper, "your business partner. He's been stealing from the cattle sales for months, haven't he? And when you discovered his ledger books, he made sure you'd take the blame." Boone stared at her in stunned silence. No one knew those details. No one except him and Frank was long gone with the money. "How?" was all he managed to say. Clementine's smile turned gentle, almost sympathetic. "Because Frank isn't as smart as he thinks he is. And because he made the mistake of stealing from our family, too." Marcus stepped forward. 3 months ago, Dawson sold us 50 head of prime cattle, took our money and delivered sick animals that infected our entire herd. Cost us everything we'd saved for winter feed. "So you see," Samuel added, "we have a mutual interest in finding Mr. Dawson and recovering what he owes." The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. This wasn't a chance encounter. The Ross family had orchestrated his arrival here, had probably been the ones to suggest his route to Thomas. They'd been hunting Frank Dawson and discovered Boone could lead them to him. "You've been playing me from the beginning," he said, anger replacing shock. "We've been protecting you," Clementine corrected. "Those bounty hunters? We could have told them exactly where to find you. Instead, we made sure you'd come here safely." She placed her hand on his chest, right over his heart. The contact sent electricity shooting through his entire body. "The question is, Mr. Carter, do you want revenge against the man who destroyed your life? Or do you want to keep running until they finally catch you?" Her touch, her proximity, her intoxicating scent, it all conspired to muddle his thinking. But beneath the attraction, a cold certainty was forming. These people were dangerous, beautiful, intelligent, and absolutely ruthless, and he was completely at their mercy. Boone stepped back from Clementine's touch, needing distance to think clearly. Her hand fell away, but her intense gaze remained fixed on his face. "You're asking me to help you hunt down Frank Dawson," he said slowly. "We're offering you the chance to clear your name," Marcus corrected. "Dawson has evidence that proves your innocence. His real ledger books, the ones showing his theft patterns. Get those books and you can go to any sheriff in the territory with proof of what really happened. And if I refuse?" Luke and Samuel exchanged glances. "Then you ride out of here tonight with fresh horses and a day's head start," Samuel said. "But the bounty hunters will catch you eventually. They always do." "However," Clementine added, moving to lean against the corral fence, "if you stay and help us, you get something much more valuable than just a head start." The way she said it, with that slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth, made Boone's pulse quicken again. "Which is?" "Justice. Real justice. And—" She paused, letting her gaze travel slowly down his body and back up to his eyes. "Perhaps other compensations as well." The implication in her voice was unmistakable, and Boone felt heat rise in his chest. This woman was unlike anyone he'd ever encountered. Beautiful, dangerous, and completely unashamed of using every weapon at her disposal. "Where is Dawson now?" he found himself asking. 3 days' ride north," Marcus replied. "He's holed up in a mining camp called Copper Ridge using the name Frank Davidson. Thinks he's clever with the name change. The camp has maybe 40 miners and a handful of guards," Luke added. "But Dawson's got himself well protected, hired 3 gunfighters to watch his back." 4 against 1 aren't good odds," Boone observed. 4 against 5, Clementine corrected. "We'd all ride together. One big happy family." Her smile turned wicked. "Though I should warn you, I can handle a rifle as well as I handle horses." The thought of watching this stunning woman in action sent an unwelcome thrill through him. He tried to focus on the practical aspects of their proposal. "What's your real plan? Walk into a mining camp and demand he hand over his books?" "Something like that," Marcus said. "Dawson's been selling watered-down whiskey to the miners, claiming it's premium stock. They're getting restless about it. All we need to do is provide them with proof of what he's really been doing. And while they're dealing with him," Clementine added, "we retrieve what he owes us, both the money and the evidence that clears your name." It sounded almost too simple, which made Boone immediately suspicious. "What aren't you telling me?" Clementine pushed away from the fence and approached him again, this time stopping close enough that he could see the individual gold flecks in her eyes. "Frank Dawson is my former fiancé." The admission hit him like a physical blow. "You're what?" "We were engaged last year, until I discovered what kind of man he really was." Her jaw tightened. "He stole from my family, humiliated me in front of the entire territory, and disappeared with another woman." The pieces of the puzzle rearranged themselves in Boone's mind. This wasn't just about money or justice. This was personal, deeply, intimately personal. "So this is about revenge," he said. "This is about setting things right," she corrected. But there was steel beneath her soft voice now. "Frank Dawson has spent months destroying lives and walking away clean. That ends now." She reached out and placed both hands on his chest, her touch sending fire through his veins. "The question is, are you man enough to help me finish what he started?" The challenge in her voice, the proximity of her body, the promise of something more than just partnership, it all combined to cloud his judgment. But beneath the attraction, a warning voice whispered that he was about to make a decision that would change everything. Before he could answer, the sound of rapidly approaching hoofbeats echoed across the ranch. Marcus cursed under his breath. "They're early." Clementine's hands tightened on Boone's chest. "The bounty hunters. They found you." Through the dust clouds, Boone could see 3 riders approaching hard, their weapons already drawn. If this story is touching you in any way, don't forget to hit the like button, share it with someone who loves a good Western tale, and subscribe to the Western Redemption channel. Every single day at exactly 10 a.m., a brand new story drops, packed with emotion, justice, and redemption. So turn on the notification bell and don't miss the next chapter, because out here in the West, no one waits around. "Get to the house," Marcus barked, but Clementine shook her head. "No time." She grabbed Boone's arm, pulling him toward the corral. "This way." The 3 bounty hunters reined in their horses 50 yards from the ranch buildings, weapons trained on the group. Their leader, a grizzled man with a silver badge gleaming on his vest, called out across the dusty space. "We're looking for Boone Carter. We know he's here." Marcus stepped forward, his hands visible and empty. "This is private property, gentlemen. You'll need a warrant to search these grounds." The leader spurred his horse closer. "We don't need a warrant for a wanted fugitive. Carter's got a price on his head for cattle theft and assault." "Assault?" Boone whispered, confusion mixing with fear. "The saloon fight," Clementine murmured back. "They're adding charges." Her grip tightened on his arm. "Trust me." The bounty hunter's gaze swept over the group, lingering on each face. Tall man, dark hair, scar on his left hand. Ring any bells? Boone instinctively curled his scarred hand into a fist, but it was too late. The leader's eyes locked onto the movement like a hawk spotting prey. "There he is." The man raised his rifle. "Boone Carter, you're under arrest." What happened next unfolded with stunning precision. Luke dove left, drawing his pistol in a smooth motion. Samuel rolled right behind a water trough, his own weapon appearing as if by magic. Marcus stepped sideways, putting himself between the bounty hunters and the corral. But it was Clementine who surprised Boone most. In one fluid movement, she snatched a Winchester rifle from where it had been propped against the fence post, shouldered it, and fired a warning shot that sent the lead horse rearing backward. "First man to point a gun at my family eats dirt," she shouted, her voice carrying absolute authority. The bounty hunters found themselves facing 4 armed opponents instead of 1 unarmed fugitive. The leader's confidence wavered visibly. "Now listen here, Missy." "No, you listen." Clementine's voice cut like steel. "This man is under our protection. You want him, you'll have to go through all of us." The second bounty hunter, younger and clearly nervous, spoke up. "There's a $1,000 reward, dead or alive. And there's a shallow grave waiting for anyone foolish enough to try collecting it on my land," Marcus added calmly. Boone watched this family rally around him with a mixture of amazement and growing dread. They were risking their lives for a man they'd known for barely an hour. But why? What did they really gain from protecting him? The lead bounty hunter seemed to be calculating odds. 3 against 4 wasn't impossible, but it wasn't clean either. And clean was what kept men like him alive in this business. "We'll be back," he finally said, lowering his rifle slightly, "with reinforcements and warrants." "You do that," Clementine replied, her rifle still trained on his chest. But next time, you might want to make sure you have the right man before you start making threats." The bounty hunter frowned. "What do you mean?" She smiled, but there was nothing warm in it now. "I mean, gentlemen, that Boone Carter died 3 days ago in a fall from his horse. We buried him ourselves. The man you're looking at is my cousin, James Ross, visiting from Colorado." Boone stared at her in shock. She was lying with such convincing ease that even he almost believed her. "That's impossible," the leader protested. "We have reliable information." "You have old information," Marcus interrupted. "Check with the town doctor in Millbrook. He'll confirm the death certificate. Poor boy never was much of a rider." The bounty hunters exchanged uncertain glances. Information could be wrong. Sources could be mistaken. And the Ross family was presenting a unified front that suggested they were telling the truth. "If you're lying," the leader began, "then you'll collect your $1,000 from a corpse," Clementine finished. "But if you're wrong and you shoot an innocent man, you'll have to answer to territorial law and my family." The threat hung in the air like smoke. Finally, reluctantly, the lead bounty hunter holstered his weapon. "This isn't over," he warned. "Yes, it is," Clementine said firmly. "It's very much over." As the 3 men rode away, Boone felt his knees weaken with relief, but questions crowded his mind faster than he could process them. "Death certificate?" he asked. Clementine finally lowered her rifle, a satisfied smile playing at her lips. "Dr. Morrison owes us a favor or two. By tomorrow, there will be official record of Boone Carter's unfortunate demise." "And James Ross? Welcome to the family." "Cousin," she said, her amber eyes sparkling with mischief and something deeper, more dangerous. In the space of one confrontation, Boone Carter had died and James Ross had been born. But looking into Clementine's beautiful, calculating face, he wondered if he'd just traded one trap for another. As the dust settled from the departing bounty hunters, Boone found himself staring at Clementine with new eyes. She moved with the same fluid grace as before, but now he understood the steel beneath her beauty. "You planned all of this," he said, not quite making it a question. She leaned the rifle against the fence post with casual precision. "We planned for several possibilities. That was just one of them." Marcus and his sons were already moving, checking sight lines and discussing watch schedules as if armed confrontations were routine occurrences, which, Boone was beginning to realize, they probably were. "How long have you been doing this?" he asked. "Helping wanted men disappear?" "Since the war ended and desperate people started flooding west," Marcus replied. "Sometimes good people get caught in bad situations. We help them find their way to better ones. For a price," Boone observed. "Everyone needs to eat," Luke said with a shrug. "But we're particular about who we help. Murderers and thieves can find their own way to hell. Then why help me? You don't know what kind of man I really am." Clementine stepped closer, close enough that he could feel the heat radiating from her skin. "Because Frank Dawson told me exactly what kind of man you are." The admission stopped him cold. "He talked about me." "Oh yes." Her voice carried a bitter edge now. "When he was trying to convince me to help him disappear with the money he'd stolen, he said his partner was too honorable, too stupid to see what was right in front of him. Said you'd probably try to make things right even if it destroyed you." She reached out and traced the scar on his left hand with one finger. The touch sent electricity shooting up his arm. "Frank was right about one thing. You are honorable, probably too honorable for your own good. And that's why you're helping me? Because your former fiancé said I was stupid?" Her laugh was soft, musical, but there was pain beneath it. "I'm helping you because Frank Dawson is a poison that ruins everything he touches. He destroyed my reputation, stole from my family, and left me branded as the foolish girl who trusted a charming thief." Her fingers moved to his chest, resting over his heart. "But mostly, I'm helping you because when I look at you, I see a man worth saving." The intensity in her amber eyes made his breath catch. This close, he could see the individual gold flecks that made them so mesmerizing. Could smell that intoxicating mix of lavender and wild sage that seemed to cling to her skin. "Clementine," he began, but she pressed a finger to his lips. "My friends call me Clem," she whispered. "But you can call me anything you want." The invitation in her voice was unmistakable. Boone felt his resolve wavering like smoke in the wind. This woman was dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with her skill with a rifle. "We should focus on the mission," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. "Should we?" She moved even closer, her body almost pressed against his. Or should we focus on the fact that you're not Boone Carter anymore? James Ross can make different choices, can he? Before he could respond, Samuel cleared his throat loudly. Hate to interrupt, but we need to discuss timing. If we're going after Dawson, we need to move fast. Clementine stepped back, but slowly, her gaze never leaving Boone's face. Samuel's right. Frank won't stay in Copper Ridge long once he hears about what happened here today. How will he hear? Boone asked, struggling to focus on practical matters while his body still hummed from her proximity. Because those bounty hunters will report back to whoever hired them, Marcus explained. And whoever hired them is probably Frank himself. He wants to make sure you're dead before you can cause him any more problems. The pieces clicked together with chilling clarity. Frank hadn't just framed him for theft. He'd put a price on his head to ensure his silence permanently. When do we leave? Boone asked. Dawn, Marcus replied. We'll take the back trails, avoid the main roads. Should reach Copper Ridge by evening tomorrow. And then? Clementine's smile returned, but this time it was predatory. Then we show Frank Dawson what happens when he makes the mistake of underestimating the people he's hurt. As the family began making preparations for their departure, Boone found himself watching Clementine move through her tasks with efficient grace. She was checking weapons, packing supplies, discussing strategy with her father and brothers like a seasoned outlaw. But every so often, she would glance his way, and those amber eyes would hold promises that had nothing to do with revenge against Frank Dawson. Tomorrow, they would ride toward what could be a deadly confrontation with a man who had already proven he would kill to protect his secrets. Tonight, Boone realized, might be his last chance to discover what lay beneath Clementine's wild beauty, and what it might cost him to find out. The mining camp of Copper Ridge sprawled across a dusty hillside like a collection of broken teeth. Even from a distance, Boone could hear the sounds of drunken miners and the tinkling piano music that meant gambling and trouble. There, Clementine pointed to a large tent near the center of camp. That's where Frank set up his operation. Calls it the Silver Dollar, just like the saloon back home. They had ridden hard all day, taking mountain trails that left their horses winded but kept them invisible to any watchers. Now, as evening shadows stretched across the mining camp, the Ross family prepared for their final gambit. Remember the plan, Marcus said quietly. Luke and Samuel circle around back. Clementine and James go in the front. I'll watch the horses and cover the exit. Boone still felt strange hearing his new name, but he was beginning to understand why the Ross family was so successful. Every detail had been planned, every contingency considered. What if Frank recognizes me? He asked. He won't, Clementine replied with confidence. You look different now. Harder. Besides, he thinks you're dead, remember? She was right. 3 days of running. Fighting and planning had changed something fundamental in his bearing. The man who had walked into their ranch had been desperate and uncertain. The man preparing to confront Frank Dawson was someone else entirely. They left their horses with Marcus and approached the tent saloon on foot. The sound of Frank's voice carrying over the crowd made Boone's blood turn cold. Even after everything, hearing that familiar laugh brought back memories of partnership and betrayal. You ready for this? Clementine whispered. Are you? She turned to look at him, and in the lantern light, her beauty was even more striking. But beneath it, he could see the steel that had drawn him from the beginning. I've been ready for months, she said softly. The question is, what happens after we finish this? The implication in her words sent heat through his chest. But before he could respond, the tent flap opened, and a familiar figure stepped into the lamplight. Frank Dawson looked prosperous and confident, his clothes expensive, his manner easy. He was exactly as Boone remembered, handsome, charming, and completely without conscience. Well, well, Frank said, his gaze settling on Clementine. Look what the wind blew in. Hello, darling. You're even more beautiful than I remembered. Clementine smiled, but there was nothing warm in it. Hello, Frank. You're exactly as worthless as I remembered. Frank's laugh was rich and genuine. Still carrying a grudge? That's not very Christian of you, Clem. Neither is stealing from your friends and framing innocent men for murder. Murder? Frank's expression shifted slightly. What are you talking about? Boone Carter, she said simply. Remember him? Your business partner? The one you had killed? For the first time, uncertainty flickered in Frank's eyes. Boone's dead. 3 days ago. Clementine lied smoothly. Shot down by bounty hunters looking for the money you stole. Boone watched Frank's face carefully. The shock seemed genuine, which suggested he hadn't ordered the killing, just the hunting. Small comfort. But it meant Frank wasn't quite the cold-blooded murderer he'd feared. "I never meant for anyone to die," Frank said quietly. "But you were willing to let it happen," Clementine replied. "Just like you were willing to steal from my family. Just like you were willing to break your promises to me." Frank straightened, some of his old arrogance returning. Business is business. Personal matters are separate. Not anymore. The tent flap opened again, and Luke and Samuel appeared behind Frank, their weapons drawn but not quite pointed at him. Frank's hired guns were nowhere to be seen, probably drunk or distracted by the camp's other entertainments. "This is a mistake," Frank said, his voice taking on a pleading tone. "Whatever you think I owe you, we can work something out." "We want the books," Clementine said simply. "The real ledger that shows what you stole. And we want the money you took from our cattle sale." "I don't have any books." Clementine sighed and nodded to her brothers. Luke grabbed Frank's arms while Samuel began searching his pockets. Within moments, they had produced a small leather journal and a heavy money pouch. "Funny thing about thieves," Clementine observed. "They never trust banks." Frank struggled against Luke's grip, his composure finally cracking. "You can't do this. This is robbery." "No," said a new voice from behind them. "This is justice." Boone stepped into the lamplight, and Frank's face went white as if he'd seen a ghost. "Hello, partner," Boone said quietly. "We need to talk." Frank Dawson staggered backward as if struck by lightning. "You're supposed to be dead." "Disappointed?" Boone asked, stepping closer. "Or just surprised that your plan to have me killed didn't work?" I didn't order anyone killed." Frank's voice cracked with genuine panic. "The bounty was for capture, not killing." "Tell that to the 3 men who rode onto the Ross ranch with drawn weapons," Clementine said coldly. "Dead or alive, remember?" Boone held out his hand toward Samuel, who placed the leather journal into his palm. As he opened it, months of betrayal revealed themselves in Frank's own handwriting. False entries, stolen money, fabricated transactions, all the evidence needed to clear his name. "Everything's here," he said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Every theft, every lie, every dollar you stole from honest people." Frank looked around desperately, but Luke and Samuel blocked any escape route. The sounds of the mining camp continued around them, but they might as well have been alone in the wilderness. "Look, we can work this out," Frank pleaded. "There's enough money for all of us. We can split it. Go our separate ways. You never have to see me again." "You're right about that last part," Clementine said. She pulled a folded paper from her coat. "This is a full confession I wrote up. It details everything you stole from my family, everything you did to frame Boone, and your real location. Sign it, and we'll let you ride out of here alive." "And if I don't sign?" "Then we let the miners know exactly how watered down that whiskey you've been selling them really is," Samuel replied. Amazing how angry men get when they realize they've been cheated. As if summoned by his words, raised voices could be heard from elsewhere in the camp. Luke smiled grimly. "Sounds like word is already spreading. You might want to hurry." Frank's hands shook as he took the confession and a pen. "This will destroy me. No town will have me." "Should have thought of that before you destroyed other people," Boone said quietly. With obvious reluctance, Frank signed the document. Clementine took it back, checked his signature, and nodded to her brothers. "The money pouch, too," she said. Frank reluctantly handed over the heavy leather bag. "That's everything I had left." "No, it isn't," Boone corrected. "But it's enough to repay the families you stole from. The rest will come from whatever you can earn honestly, if you remember how." The angry voices from the camp were getting closer. Frank looked toward the tent flap with growing panic. "You should ride," Clementine advised. "Fast and far, because if I ever see your face again, I won't be nearly this generous." Frank needed no further encouragement. He pushed past them and disappeared into the night, leaving behind only the sound of rapidly departing hoofbeats. As the Ross family gathered their things, Boone found himself standing close to Clementine in the lamplight. She looked up at him with those remarkable amber eyes, and he saw something new in them. Not just attraction or partnership, but genuine affection. "So, James Ross," she said softly, "what will you do now that you're a free man?" He reached out and cupped her face in his hands, feeling the silk of her skin against his calloused palms. "I was thinking about settling down, maybe starting fresh somewhere. Somewhere like where? Somewhere with a beautiful woman who can gentle wild horses and face down armed men without flinching." Her smile lit up her entire face. That sounds like a very specific somewhere. It is, he said, and leaned down to kiss her. The kiss was everything he'd imagined and more, sweet and fierce, tender and passionate. When they finally broke apart, Clementine's cheeks were flushed and her eyes bright. "Welcome home, James Ross," she whispered. 6 months later, Boone Carter was officially declared dead, and his name cleared of all charges. James Ross married Clementine in a small ceremony attended by the entire Ross family and half the territory. He took over managing the legitimate side of the family business, while Clementine continued her work with horses. Frank Dawson was never seen in that part of the territory again, though rumors occasionally surfaced of a broken man working odd jobs in distant mining camps, always looking over his shoulder. And sometimes, when the afternoon light caught Clementine's hair just right as she worked in the corral, James would stop whatever he was doing and marvel at the wild beauty that had changed his life forever. If you enjoyed this story, click the video on your screen now to watch another unforgettable Western tale, where destiny and courage collide in ways you never expected. Don't forget to subscribe and consider a super chat to help us keep bringing you more stories like these. Your support means everything to us.